Lieutenant General Leslie Groves, director of the Manhattan Project, the hidden U.S. crash effort to build the atomic weapon, faced a vital choice in September 1942. The goal of the project was to create uranium-235, an isotope of uranium with an unstable nucleus that could readily be split to start a fission chain reaction, releasing massive amounts of destructive energy. However, this would necessitate a large, sophisticated manufacturing process involving tens of thousands of people, which would have to be kept hidden to avoid spies and traitors interfering. However, the question remained as to where those facilities might be hidden. Many prospective locations were found in various countries, but they all had limitations to provide the vast amounts of electricity necessary to do the job. Numerous areas in Washington state, for example, would have necessitated the building of extensive power lines. But this didn't want to be built near a densely populated area because the work's potential health consequences were unknown, and it would have been simpler for enemy spies to integrate in. After all, a 24,000-hectare site in rural eastern Tennessee was chosen because it was not only unnoticeable to anybody outside of the lightly populated area, but it was also near to Tennessee Valley Authority hydropower dams, which could supply the massive amounts of electricity required for the plants. It was the ideal location for the Clinton Engineer Works, the atomic complex, as well as a hidden city to accommodate the workers. Because it sounded sufficiently rural and generic to be utilized as a cover name for the residential area, the administration opted to name the secret city Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge, Tennessee is basically like any other tiny American town. They had a Walmart, a Dollar General, and ALDI. This is Tennessee's fifth biggest town at the time, which didn't really exist from 1942 to 1945. Oak Ridge was a real place, but no one knew about it. The 1,000 or so local residents returned home in October 1942 to find notices on their doors advising them that they had 6 weeks to leave because the government had taken their land under compulsory acquisition. So when all the walls and buildings were erected in the matter of months in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the hired employees were given very little information. They only knew that their efforts would bring the battle to an end. It did, as a matter of fact, since they were working on the atomic weapon as part of the Manhattan Project. The name came from the fact that the sites were very similar to New York. They used about the same amount of energy and power due to all the machinery. The air was poisonous. They had to overpay the residents to persuade them to live in such poor conditions, and everyone thought they were more valuable than they actually were. Of course, in World War II, the enemies weren't kind. Therefore, it was critical that the US didn't spill secrets to Axis agents by accident. As a result, the entire 75,000 population town of Oak Ridge, Tennessee was kept completely secret. Not even the vice president was aware of its existence. When the bomb was detonated on Hiroshima, all but a few people were unaware that such a kind of weapon existed. It was shocking news, to say the least. The government's method of keeping this massive operation secret was as brilliant as the technology they were developing. There was no mention of Oak Ridge on any map. Houses were built outside the town and hauled in to be installed using the fewest possible construction employees. Every bit of mail that had come in and went out was checked and read, not just to ensure that no information of the work going on within the fences were included, but also to ensure that no signals that transmitted details were included. There were billboards like this all over town, telling everyone that what they were doing was private, but the government believed that with 75,000 people, a few spies would inevitably get in. As a result, nearly everyone had no idea what they were doing. Despite the fact that hundreds of thousands of individuals worked on the Manhattan Project at Oak Ridge and other locations, only a few dozen people knew the atomic bomb existed before the Hiroshima explosion, contrary to one assessment. The workers found out what they were building the day after the bomb went off in the newspaper. Every person would be assigned a single work, and the few highest-ranking scientists would be the only ones who knew how it connected to the other activities. One person, for instance, was given the responsibility of watching a dial and turning a valve when it hit 100. He didn't know why he was doing it. Another laundry worker was instructed to hold a machine up to each item of clothes and listen for a popping sound. She had no idea she was using a radiation detector to check for radioactivity. Security officials were stationed throughout Oak Ridge keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Residents shunned groups of more than 7 people and having the same individual over often because they knew that if the security personnel were suspicious in the least, even if it was unverified, they would be kicked out for good. If a leak was discovered, the resident would be sentenced to 10 years in prison or fined $100,000. Generally, Americans were really into the concept of winning, so even individuals who knew a lot about what was going on in Oak Ridge kept quiet out of patriotism, not wanting to give the enemy any knowledge. Oak Ridge, on the other hand, had stores, restaurants, and even sports teams at the time. Oak Ridge appeared to be a typical American town, one that just happened to be home to the world's most nuclear weapon. Finally, the various elements of the once secret Tennessee atomic complex were broken up after the war. Part of it was finally transformed as the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which contributed to the development of nuclear medicine by producing isotopes for use in cancer treatment and diagnostic tools, as well as conducting cutting-edge research in diverse fields, from nanotechnology to wireless charging for electric vehicles. During the Cold War, another section became the Y-12 National Security Complex, which manufactured components for tens of thousands of thermonuclear warheads in the US military and later assisted in the dismantling of US and former Soviet nuclear weapons. The East Tennessee Technology Park now occupies a third of the property. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this video, kindly like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.